Displacements in Hammer for Team Fortress 2. Displacements are the ground that you see, that you walk on, or cliffs. It's the ground that has real terrain, changes in height. I'm going to open up one of my older maps that's actually somewhat finished to show you exactly what I mean. So I'll go into the 3D viewport. The displacements are the ground here, the ground that's not made out of flat walls, angular geometry, or what have you. It's been displaced. It's got shapes to it. So you can make cliffs, arches, and ground with displacements, and they're really important, and they're a little difficult to understand if you haven't made maps in Team Fortress before. So let's hop right into it. So to make a displacement, you start out by making a brush with the brush creator tool right here. Pick whatever texture you want. For the purpose of this tutorial, I'm going to pick one of the textures that has blend in it. So if you type blend, you'll see a couple textures if you have the ABS resource pack, which you probably should, where you can see there's two textures separated on a diagonal here. And I'm going to pick one of these just to show another purpose displacements. When you apply that texture, it only shows one of the textures, and I'll show you why in a second. To create a displacement, get the face editing tool, which is right underneath the brush creation tool, this one, and select whatever faces you want the displacement on. For the case of the ground or the floor within your map, you probably only want the top face. So I select this one, I go to the Displacement tab, hit Create. You can choose powers of 1, 2, 3, or 4, and that just shows how many vertices will be there. 4 is a little excessive and can cause compile errors. 2 and 3 are usually nice. For larger brushes, you should probably wind up using 3. As you can see, these are kind of large. There's a large distance between each vertex, which means you can't get terribly detailed with how you make the displacement. Now, when you're actually making ground, all you're really doing is manipulating these vertices up and down. So you go to the Paint Geometry tab here, you click on it, and you make sure this is set to raise/lower, and then you can pick an axis to work on. So if you pick the Z-axis, you will go straight up and straight down when you left-click. So left-click goes straight up, right-click goes straight down. And you can make all sorts of shapes with this. Now, to make nice big smooth changes, you can increase the radius of what area you're selecting, and you can also change the distance that one click will move. For instance, one click will move very far when I set it all the way to the right, and it'll move very, very, very small if I set it all the way to the left, and you have to hold down the button to get any real change. And you can create interesting ground that and differences in height that is smooth and nice, and you can actually have grass-looking objects. You can also use the smooth setting here to smooth out any rough terrain that you make that's really jagged, which is nice. And you can also do raise to, which will raise it to a specific value. Like for right now, it's raising to whatever the displacement's original face was at. Now, another important thing of displacements, especially with those blends, is the alpha. If you go to Paint Alpha, and then you go to Raise/Lower and set the value all the way to the right, and then right-click, it changes to the other texture from the blend. And this is a way that you can have textures blend nicely from one to the other without having any sort of transition. You can also set the value lower to get just a little hint of the texture, and then it'll make a nice, even nicer transition. If you right-click, it'll go back to the original texture. So this is the way that most ground is made in most maps, the floor. Now, an important thing when you're building displacements is that you make sure that the vertices of the original box that you started with all match up. So, for instance, if I want to have multiple displacements for my floor, it's great to build them in a grid. The reason for this is you can select all 4 faces, go to displacement, and then hit sew, and all of a sudden they're connected. So this is a really easy way to fix errors in your map, and you won't have any weird displacement gaps. which are very frustrating to fix, let me tell you. And then you've got all of this area to work with, and you can use multiple brushes without having high-powered displacements to get a large amount of work done. Now this is true in all sorts of directions. You can make it transition to a cliff very nicely if you make a brush where the vertices line up again on the wall like this. So this one is lined up with this. You can see if I go to the vertex editor that the vertices are touching right here. So if I make a displacement on this wall and here, we've got a displacement, I can manipulate these just the same, and then you can make a nice cliff out of that. You typically would like to be in the X or Y axis so you can bow the cliff in and out so that it looks like a cliff and not a flat wall. Surprise, surprise. A very neat tool with displacements as well that should be used wisely is the subdivide tool. You can do a whole lot of cool things with it. So for example, if you have a ramp that you want to make, if you want to make a ramp up to a different height, what you do is you can get the displacements using the vertex editor. You can drag the vertices down so they match. And if you want to make this a nice smooth slope, you just create a displacement on each, and then you hit subdivide, and then it smooths it out. However, it keeps the outlying perimeter of the displacements unaltered. So if you want this whole thing to look really smooth, all you have to do is make it so that there's displacements on either side, and then you hit subdivide on all of them. And then what you can do is you can delete the outer ones. And then you've got a fantastic, nice, even slope that won't have any weird jagged issues. And then of course you can also further alter it to make it more interesting and less perfect if you wish. There's also other cool things that can be made with the subdivide tool. The coolest thing you can make, probably in my opinion, are pipes. That you can walk in, like the pipes in 2 Fort, if you choose to play that silly map. So the way you can make pipes is you can make 4 brushes like this, and you need the vertices to align. So you go to the vertex editor and you want to make them so that they're kind of trapezoid shapes, so that their vertices all line up on the grid here and they all match. It really only matters for the inner one, but it keeps it clean for the outside one as well. And then, so what you can do is you can take these sections, and then you have to, if you want it to be smooth all the way through, you have to have a section before and after. And I can create a displacement on all of these faces, like this. Create power 3, subdivide. And if you delete the pieces on the end, you'll be left with a fantastic little circle like this. So you can use this for to make pipes, and you can also use this general technique for making, you can make corners in pipes. As long as your vertices all line up, you can make corners, slopes, and all sorts of things within pipes, which is really cool.